Junction Point was a game studio founded by designer and director Warren Spector of Deus Ex and Thief fame. The company, a subsidiary of Disney, was only ever able to release 2 games, Epic Mickey and its sequel. However, its short history was filled with projects and ideas that never amounted to anything. Project Goliath was one of these, a highly ambitious pitch for a new IP. The tale behind Goliath is personal, one about a small team of developers who let their imaginations run wild in search of the next great action-adventure video game. My guide through the twists and turns of its unusual lifespan was Alexander Ron, a game designer based in New York City. His experience with Project Goliath began in 2010 during his sophomore year at the Savannah College for Art and Design.
There's definitely like a lot of sort of hurdles that you have to cross. Game design is not an entry-level position. It's very difficult to get in as a game designer to start out. So I found out that through our school that we could actually go to E3 as students and go for free. So of course I was like, absolutely. I go there. And I went with a group of fellow students, and, we had a group, we would go around, we'd play a couple games, we'd have some fun, and we decided to take a tour of LA. We went on the subway, we traveled around, and we started talking about some of the games that we saw. Particular Limbo was one of the big games that was at the event that we were really excited for, and we were having a big discussion about Limbo, and we noticed there's this guy kind of sitting and you could kind of tell he was listening in on us, and he kind of just jumps into the conversation and he's just like, I thought Limbo was pretty cool too. We're just like, whatever, this guy seems all right. So we just started talking. We started cracking jokes, and he seemed to really like us, and we kind of absorbed him into our group.
This individual would turn out to be game industry veteran Clay Hoffman, Junction Point senior environment artist. He had previously worked at Ion Storm on games like Deus Ex and Thief Deadly Shadows. Their newfound connection to Hoffman presented Alex and his friends with unprecedented access, allowing them to mingle with known members of the industry. At E3, they were introduced by him to a number of other Junction Point staff, namely Warren Spector, who was there to present Epic Mickey. It wasn't until E3 was over, however, that the students would inch closer towards the possibility of working directly with Junction Point. Hoffman kept in touch with them once the event was over, and about a month later, on July 7th, 2010, he reached out to them with an opportunity. He told them that with Junction Point on the verge of completing Epic Mickey, the chance would soon present itself for developers to pitch new projects to the company's management and Disney's approval board. Clay Hoffman wanted to be at the forefront of the next pitching season, putting forward his idea for a new IP. He wanted to work alongside the students in his free time to develop the concept and eventually submit a proposal. If the game was greenlit, he promised to bring them in to work on the project at Junction Point in an official capacity.
So we went ahead and decided, hey, let's do this. Let's see where we can go. If it fails, I get a notch on my resume, which would be fantastic. If it goes somewhere, that would be quite splendid.
Hoffman's initial ideas for the project were quite vague and in need of further development, but essentially revolved around a large gorilla character acting as a protector of young children.
He was really fixated on the idea of just having a gorilla almost take up the role of a stork, basically delivering children and babies to different houses, and it would almost be like a stealth game. That was the very original genesis of the project. We as the team, especially with me, we really wanted to push for something else a little bit more interesting, per se. Not to say it was a bad idea, it was very rough.
As the project's ideas were expanded upon by the team, they found themselves drawing inspiration from some of their favorite 3D platformers from around that period.
We were really big on Jack and Daxter and Rachet and Clank, and this was at the time Epic Mickey was out, so we were pretty sure that Junction Point would be very comfortable with a 3D platformer. And sad to say, this is kind of when the 3D platformer genre was sort of petering off. Aside from Epic Mickey and maybe a couple of the Ratchet and Clank games, there really wasn't too much around in terms of just a 3D platformer, and we really wanted to explore sort of that nostalgic feeling. So we decided to give the gorilla sort of a sidekick and create an entirely different stories.
The gorilla's sidekick originally was going to be a boy named Kyvan, but that would soon change. The developers decided that the sidekick being a young girl would be more interesting, and more appropriate given one of the project's key inspirations was the original Mighty Joe Young. Released in 1949, Mighty Joe Young was a movie about a gorilla named Joe who was raised by a girl called Jill. Joe eventually grows to an enormous size, but the two remain friends and look out for one another. While Joe makes use of his brute strength to protect Jill, she uses her wit and cunning to save him from the perils of captivity. The dynamic between the two characters helped inspire the relationship at the heart of Goliath. The two protagonists in Goliath were Tarek the gorilla and Kai, his human counterpart. Their differences were considerable, but throughout the story they would develop an understanding and eventually a close friendship. At the centre of the story were underlying themes of family and belonging. Kai was a young girl who had fled her home by boat, looking to escape her family with whom she has a troubled relationship. Her ship is ravaged by a huge unseen creature beneath the water, and she finds herself stranded on an uncharted island. As she wakes up, the island rises up out of the water and into the sky. Searching for help, she spots a large gorilla running into the jungle, a siren sound in the background. She chases after him and the two come face to face. Tarek is an oversized gorilla with cybernetic enhancements that was taken against his will from his home planet. He was brutally experimented on by his captors and augmented with special abilities, including super strength. The two of them come to realise that they are mutually interested in escaping the island and uncovering the true nature of their situation, so they decide to team up. Kai climbs aboard Tarek's back and their adventure begins. In their journey, the couple often have to fight a variety of behemoths enemies, including robots and other cybernetically enhanced creatures. Tarek's ample strength and skill in combat can be used to defeat some of these, but not all of them are susceptible to mere melee attacks. This is where the much smaller and more nimble Kai would come in, jumping down from Tarek's back to climb these Goliaths and begin sabotaging them. Fights like these would play out in different phases. For example, Tarek would initially have to attack a certain section of an enemy to expose an opening or a weak point. Then Kai could scale its outer shell and climb inside it. The player would then switch to a section in which they guide Kai through its interior with the goal of finding a weakness. Some of them would be so big that they would be comparable in size to a full level in other games. Once inside, Kai could, for instance, use her engineering skills to modify the creature. This would cause some of its armor plating to fall off or one of its robotic limbs to disconnect. This would then allow Tarek on the outside to exploit this new vulnerability.
It sort of became this really crazy sort of tag team, almost like tag team wrestling dynamic that you would have with the duo. Honestly, it was kind of an interesting concept. I really don't think I've seen anyone sort of do that.
Their various abilities would have also been used to solve puzzles in the environment. Tarek would have been able to lift heavy objects or destroy barriers to clear the way, and Kai could call upon her arsenal of high-tech gadgetry. She would have been equipped with an item known as the Super Tool, a futuristic Swiss Army knife of sorts. The Super Tool would have had a plethora of different functions. Kai could hack robots to make them fight on her behalf, similar to the paint capture mechanic from Epic Mickey. It could even shoot rods of energy into walls, making rungs that would allow Tarek to climb up walls. Both Kai's tech and Tarek's cybernetic augmentations could be enhanced as the game went on by collecting modules found in the environment. Kai could then use them to engineer upgrades, enabling access to new weapons and abilities. The codename Goliath was chosen because the developers felt that it captured the sense of scale they wanted players to experience as they controlled Kai. The world around them was planned to be enormous and populated with creatures of increasingly intimidating size. Eventually, the two of them would even come across gigantic turtle creatures with entire cities on their backs for them to explore.
Again, we wanted to go a bit riskier because we had Clay Hoffman sort of vouching us. And again, you are given this opportunity that's so grand, you might as well go big or go home.
Another one of the project's big inspirations was Shadow of the Colossus, a game which was praised for its ambitious scope and presentation of large-scale environments and creatures. As an enthusiast of the game, Clay Hoffman demanded other members of the team play it to get an idea for what Goliath was aiming for. Like Shadow of the Colossus, Goliath was intended to be an intimate, emotional story. The game was set to be full of action, but the developers were adamant adamant about it being character-driven and thematically interesting. As it progressed, players would have learned more about the origins of the creatures inhabiting the game's setting. It would have been revealed that they were handpicked from various planets throughout the galaxy by a twisted alien villain. The antagonists' experiments on them were an attempt to amass an army of technologically enhanced creatures and use them to do his bidding. His plans were fairly straightforward, but the developers wanted to create an element of sympathy for their villain. He was supposed to be the last of his race, seeking revenge against the galactic forces responsible for the eradication of his kind, and as we would later find out, his family. One way or another, Kai would need to take him down, but would have wrestled with the option of killing him, feeling sympathy for his tragic circumstances. How the story would have played out in the end was never decided. This was, after all, an early pitch and very far from finalised. Among the platforms considered were Nintendo Wii, PS3 and Xbox 360, although no gameplay prototypes were ever made. The developers worked on the project in their spare time, awaiting their chance to submit a pitch to Disney and hopefully work on it as the media giant's next big video game IP. But once Epic Mickey was released, the situation at Junction Point was rapidly in flux.
That's when things got a little ugly. There was a lot of tension that Clay Hoffman told me about in the company. I'm not going to go into too many details, but he said it just got a little rough. Warren Spector, believe it or not, is a huge Mickey Mouse fan. His dream game was to make a Mickey game. And the fact that it wasn't as well received as a lot of people had intended, it had a lot of hype to it. I can't even imagine how he felt. That must have been very rough.
Regardless of the criticisms leveled at various aspects of Epic Mickey, none of the negativity stopped the game from being successful. It ended up being one of Disney's best-selling games of that year, despite releasing on only one system. Looking to improve upon the first game and continue its story, Junction Point's management decided to pursue a sequel. With the first game performing well, Disney was more than willing to greenlight it. This meant that plans for the Goliath team to pitch that game would have to be put on hold.
And so we decided to sort of hold off for a little bit and potentially see if maybe we can pitch it later, maybe near the end of development.
In the background of Epic Mickey 2, work on the pitch quietly marched on at a steady pace. Clay Hoffman, despite a hectic schedule working full-time at Junction Point, didn't give up on it. He would still meet with his fellow team members, investing his free time to continue expanding upon it. In November 2012, Epic Mickey 2 launched on multiple platforms around the world, although it was far from the success that its developers were hoping for. Reviews for the title were mixed. Overall, its reception ended up being more tepid than that of the predecessor they had once hoped to outdo. Subsequently, sales numbers for the game were dire. According to the LA Times, it sold only 270,000 copies in North America during its first month on the market, less than a quarter of the first game's performance within that same period of time. Junction Point suddenly found itself in serious trouble. Attempts were made in its last weeks to save the company, including a pitch for a Donald Duck game. Disney was ultimately unable to overlook the failure of Epic Mickey 2 The Power of Two and shut the studio down in January 2013. The winds of change swept through the publisher that month as they also announced the existence of their next major undertaking, Disney Infinity.
It kind of was terrible for us because this was events that were completely out of our control. And that's the thing, you gotta realize in the game industry, you have so much stuff that can go wrong, especially when you're trying to get a new IP launched.
As Junction Point fell, Goliath's prospects were looking grim. Whatever its fate though, the team could at least take some comfort in having a strong addition to their portfolios and being able to tell future job interviewers about this valuable experience. Unfortunately for them, however, even this consolation was scuppered when a betrayal of trust came from someone close. An artist on the team who had produced concepts for the potential game submitted some of this work to a prestigious art competition at the Savannah College of Art and Design. After going through a review process, the artwork was flagged up by college staff for plagiarism.
It was pretty much a punch to the gut for me because I tried to defend this person. I even spoke to them and I'm just like, listen, how can this be possible? We work together. I know you're talented and I've seen what you did. And this person basically told me that they're all out to get them, that this was all bullshit, And I, for a while, believed that person. And, until I got contacted by a friend of mine who actually worked for the student council, and they knew about the project that I was working on, and they showed me the evidence. And honestly, it was probably one of the most rough experiences of my life. Like, and I'm gonna send it to you, and I guess you will show the people who are watching this video. Yeah. It was heartbreaking. It just killed me. I could not believe it. And the problem was, because of this, some of the people who were involved in the project had to take their name off of it. And we had some people who might or might not be quite important. And all of a sudden, sort of this crown jewel of my portfolio and sort of this project I put so much time into became sort of this item of contention with the school. And this person eventually left in shame before they received any sort of repercussions for their actions. Mm-hmm. And from this day on, whenever I showed this project, I have to tell the people that this art might or might not be plagiarized. And all the work that we really put into it, just the hours, just sort of this dream come true, just completely shot to shit. And so on top of not only just losing our opportunity to pitch this, we find out that we had one of the people that we were very trusting, who I considered to be a great artist and a friend of mine, just stole someone's work. And in the game industry, that's how you get on the blacklist.
This incident was the last straw for Goliath. With an indefinite amount of their art having been plagiarized, they were left unable to pitch it to Disney, or any other publishers for that matter. With the exception of the aforementioned artist in question, each of the students went on to land various roles in game development. Clay Hoffman, on the other hand, quit the game industry altogether when Junction Point was shuttered by Disney to work as a freelance artist and UX designer.
He wanted to get kids and people who were younger sort of the opportunity to prove themselves. He could have had the pick of the litter. He could have gone around and brought other major people on, but he wanted to bring a lot of younger people on, and he wanted fresh new ideas, and he wanted to give young people an opportunity and a shot in the game industry. And we need more people like Clay Hoffman in this industry, who is willing to take a risk and let young people get involved in the game industry, especially those who are just starting out.
If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe and check out my other videos for more exclusive looks at lost video games. You can check out my videos on either the cancelled open world video game based around The Flash, or Sonic the Hedgehog's lost skateboarding game. Unseen64 is an archive for unreleased and unseen video games. You can visit the site at unseen64.net. I've been Liam, thanks for watching, and have fun.